I came across this TED Talk and I just really liked it and it spoke to me. And we're gonna put it up. And here she is. So
we'll play it after.
Well, what we're gonna do, we're gonna put the link to the TED Talk so that everyone can go see it. And I'm not gonna ask Betty to basically do her TED Talk because that's kind of not the point of this. But it was I found it very profound. In the parallel that I saw from what she was telling was her story, a personal story about canceling somebody and what that felt like and what that was. And I see how that is like societal. And I see that as like her story was this microcosm of the bigger problem that we have as a society. And I found that very profound. And then, of course, I had to do further research. And it turns out Ms. Hart's also a theater artist person. So now that's a whole other...
In a union, too.
And in a union, mind you. So it's like now there's just like, now I'm just, I'm giddy because now it's like, because I didn't know. She could have just been, I saw the TED Talk. She could have been, I don't know. All sorts of people do TED Talks. So I was really excited to know. Anne lives in Colorado, I believe, which I went to Boulder. So that's very exciting for me. So yeah, get rid of that one.
And welcome.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. How are y'all?
Good.
Warm.
Yeah.
You guys are cold.
How is Colorado these days?
Well, it's warmer than it was this weekend when we had the 4th worst snowstorm in the history of Colorado.
Wow.
Yeah, no climate change problems there. That's for sure.
Wow.
None. It just happens like that.
None whatsoever. So you heard me just talking about your talk, and I know that you've obviously gotten a lot of comments and support and stuff from it because I clearly am not the only person that thought it was awesome. But as soon as I saw that, I'm like, oh, I really want to talk to her. I need to talk to her. And the way you told your story, and I don't know how to, like, if you could just tell a little bit of your story, like what inspired you to do the talk? And like, what message is it? Like, what's the key message? Because obviously we want people to go watch the TED Talk because that's even cooler. But just like a synopsis and how you got, like, what was your inspiration to do the talk?
Okay, well, the inspiration was starting in the fall of 2016. People who I like, admire, and respect began to say things like, so-and-so is going to be uninvited to Thanksgiving. Grandpa can't come. My cousin can't come. So-and-so can't come. And when I'd ask why, they said because of political ideology. And that disturbed me because these were people who they were in relationship for decades, right? When it comes to your grandparents, they've known you your whole life. And suddenly there was something greater than that. And so that began to just concern me. And I began to talk to people about how I disagreed with that. And then years later, I was asked just at the right time, did I have an idea worth sharing? And to be very honest, I didn't think anyone would be interested. And I didn't plan on doing it. They literally pursued me and asked me. And when I talked about the fact that I believed compassion could actually be stronger and it could be used to help overcome this, the person immediately said, oh my God, you want to use compassion to cancel culture? And I went, yeah, that's it. Yeah. And that kind of began the journey of crafting the talk from there.
It was really amazing. I mean, we all talk about what is cancel culture. And I think that the term has transitioned over the past, say 10 years or so. As I think of it, it was something started out from conservatives to not allow more liberals to talk on college campuses. You would get it in the academics, like certain people that believe certain things, they wouldn't be invited. They wouldn't be like in a broader scale. And now to me, it's like we live in this toxic world where anybody who is perceived as doing anything that's a microaggression or anything, that's it, we're done, they're canceled, they're out. And it's very unproductive. And it really keeps everybody divided on so many issues instead of coming together on issues that we agree on. And so I was wondering, like, when you were working on this, were you thinking of it, obviously not just from your family? I mean, that was such a, microcosm of this, but like, were you thinking about the broader picture?
I was, and that's why I definitely brought in Ruth Bader Ginsburg to give a hint that this had more larger implications, but I chose to address it on the personal level because I think that's where real change happens. If anyone is willing to listen to someone who's different and has a very different point of view and is willing to say, because you're a human being and you're in relationship with me, whether that be a colleague at work or a neighbor or a family member or a close friend, I'm willing to extend this to you because the sum of who you are is greater than any of the individual thoughts that you might have. And I thought if I could get someone to move the needle when it comes to someone they've already committed to loving, then it's a lot easier to get people to move the needle with politicians, celebrities, and people that we don't really know, but we attach ourselves to anyway.
Yeah, I have that experience regularly in the political side of things. I tend to ally with anybody who is going to be on my team for whatever the issue. So when we were talking about, protesting drilling in the Everglades, I found friends and common ground with the Republican Club that they believe in Everglades restoration. And so I made a friend, and that's somebody we don't agree with on a lot of things, but we do agree on, we can work together. And the kind of negative pushback I have gotten from the Democrats, from the centrist people that I affiliate with, how can I go to those meetings and how can I hang out with them? And it's really very, it's looked down upon. It's like we're not supposed to talk to the other side.
Yeah, it's kind of scary because when you think about it, if someone doesn't love your favorite television show or doesn't vibe with your favorite color or type of music, then it's not a big deal, right? You can still accept who they are. But somehow in the past few years, we've moved into this, I'm going to call it crazy, though that's not the right word, but it's a little troubling that we can't accept differences. Your favorite food may be whatever it is. That has nothing to do with my life. Why should I abandon you as a friend or bring you on as a friend because of something minor like that?
And I think that this also comes into play, not just with we don't see things the same, but with what are these called, these microaggressions and things that happen and that somebody gets sort of labeled and stamped for eternity. And they're not even given an opportunity to learn, grow, get forgiveness, even when they ask for it. And just like, I've had that down here. I've had that experience where just being labeled and not even, and trying to get, talk and figure things out, and just having people then lie about me and make up stuff and then just sort of cancel me. And so I've had that experience, and it's really very counterproductive to getting anything done when you're talking about people that are supposedly on your team, and yet now you have to work around them because they're ignoring you. It's very toxic. And I don't think that people understand it happens at a very personal level. It happened to me here. Something went down. Wasn't a great moment for me. In the moment, immediately recognized it, apologized profusely, felt horrible, wasn't even thinking what I was doing. Wrote a letter, apologized profusely to multiple people in writing and in person multiple times over the course of a couple of weeks. Was told everything's fine, it's all good, we get you. And I really there was no malintent, none whatsoever. It was just me being 50 and a little out of touch. So I said, okay, everything's fine. And then a few months later, when I say I'm running for Congress, then this person puts out this information about me, publicly shaming me for something that I had apologized profusely for, meant no bad, there was no malintent at all. It was just a complete foot and mouth thing, and was just shamed. And now there's this entire group of people that just bought into that lie, and they just call me out as racist. I'm racist. I'm racist. And it's been 2 years now. It's been about 2 years, and these people they don't know anything else about me but this one story that someone told them from one incident one night. And it's just, this is ridiculous. And and it's constant. So anytime I post, these same girls jump on, hating. And there is no forgiveness. There is no, let's discuss it. And in fact, then lied and said that I wasn't willing to talk about it. I started the minute it happened. And so then they lied about me and said I didn't want to discuss it. So this is the kind of nonsense. So I've been canceled.
What was the exact incident? What was said that they?
Okay, so this is thing. Do you mind if I tell you this, because this is really my canceling experience? So I was at at a function for they call themselves the Black progressive, but they're not progressives. I will tell you that they're not progressives.
No, it's a Kamala Harris.
It is. It's very centrist, but whatever. So I was at a function and we were outside and there were people hanging out and partying, and I was just hanging out and having fun. And I was there with friends. Like I was having a good time, and somebody dropped a glass. This guy dropped a glass outside, and I said something like, "Oh my God, like don't get too crazy. Somebody's going to call the cops on us." But I was going into my college mindset of what it was like at a party or like a rave when something gets out of control. And I was totally playing because he broke the glass. And I'm like the most chill person. Like I couldn't care less. And I ran up to him immediately and I said, "Oh my God, that's not what I meant. I'm so sorry. I wasn't being threatening. I just felt like collectively it's like a party getting crazy." And this was the incident that led to this chain of events of them saying that they say, "I'm Karen." The story has translated into, "I threatened to call the police on him." So you know how like the telephone game, like it changes over time. Now the story is, "I threatened to call the police on him." And this is the narrative that a lot of people have believed about me. And it's very, I know flat out who knows the truth is this woman who started talking this about me, and she flat out knows the truth. She knew from that moment in my eyes where I was like, "Oh my God, that's not what I meant." And, and again, in writing and multiple times thereafter. So like, I don't know if you have can you have some sympathy for my story?
Well, I just have empathy that you had to go through this period. I think what's sad is that you made a mistake, you recognized you made a mistake, you tried to rectify it, you thought it was done, and then only because you sought public office, this returned, and there's no willingness to actually engage in what actually happened. That's incredibly sad, and I can't imagine, because certainly a term like racist or sexist or any of the ist, right, once branded, it becomes kind of, the albatross around your neck, and you literally can't remove it. And that's awful. I mean, that's really horrible. And what I would say, and I think, that's what you're doing, is that you're continuing in the face of it, right? Because that's all you can do, is hope that the sum of who you are eventually is seen, and that those who refuse are always going to be there, right? There's always going to be that contingency that's not for you no matter what you do. And it's hard. I think you have to keep moving forward and not let it weigh you down, especially when you know what's true and you actually did everything you could to fix the situation when it went wrong.
Yeah, I mean, if this were just personal, right? If this were just personal, I couldn't care less what people think about me. I really don't. I've got pretty thick skin. I really don't care. What bothers me is that it impedes progress, because these are people that are politically active. And so we run in similar circles. Like, we'd be so much more effective and productive without this nonsense. So that's the real reason it bothers me. It isn't, "Oh, my feelings are, I know who I am." Like, I have that's not an issue for me, but that's why.
Betty, I have to say your TED Talk was phenomenal, and it was the right length, because you know how a lot of times people don't want to, I can't do 30 minutes, but it's like, it's 11 minutes long. All right, that's reasonable. So it's just the way that you were, it was such a well-flowed conversation, but just explaining, how much your father meant to you and how much it hurt that you had that falling out, and then eventually we all know what Alzheimer's does. And so the question that I have for you, which I think is a big one, because we know what a toxic political environment we're living in today, if you could talk about how cancel culture basically is being used as a political football on both sides. This is not limited to one particular area, but I do think that cancel culture, at its core, I do think that there are people who truly believe that there are, really horrific people out there. Like, if you're aware of what a right-wing content creator, Steven Crowder, did this week, disparaging Black farmers in the most blatantly bigoted way possible. That's the type of person who doesn't have a leg to stand on and never should. But I also believe that there are a lot of people who do take things out of context deliberately, and they do it because they see it as a means of stepping on somebody's shoulders to get to the next rung on the ladder.
Yeah.
And I would love to hear your perspective as far as that is concerned.
Well, one, I'm not in politics, so certainly I'm not a part of that world. But what I would say is that the people who use cancel culture to advance another agenda are simply using another power tactic. It's no different than any number of other power tactics, but it's about power. It's not about truth. It's not about honor. It's not about integrity. It's about power, because the reality is there's no human being alive who hasn't made a mistake at some point. If you're 10 years old and over, I'm going to suggest that you've made a mistake. And so to brand someone forever because of one item that they've done is problematic to me, first of all, because it implies that we don't have a chance for redemption. We don't have a chance to grow. We don't have a chance to change, even though we know that change is perpetual. You literally can't stay the same even if you want to. Your body is renewed. Your skin cells change. So I think politics has become increasingly ugly because it's all about money and power, and it isn't, unfortunately, what it should be about: serving the people and representing the entire constituency as opposed to only a segment.
Yeah, I mean, that's our mission on the show, is we say it's transforming politics into service. I believe that those are our employees, and that they're extremely insubordinate, and that there's no other business where your employees would make more money, have better health benefits than you, give themselves a raise, and we would all just sit there and pat them on the back. I mean, I can't think of any other business where that works. But the thing is, it isn't just when you put the little banner up and it says canceling cancel culture. I think that the key issue is that it's with compassion,
Right. Okay.
because the idea is I find it's so toxic within us to carry that and to carry that sort of disdain for somebody. It's compassion is the only way to make that feel any better. Like, the only way to do that is through compassion. And I think that's the key thing. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, so now that you've done this, and obviously this is kind of blown up. So, I mean, when I put who you were, I didn't put motivational speaker. I put artist, activist, and speaker. But then you're very diverse. So talk a little bit about what you really do, because I also find that really cool as well.
I have 3 different hats, so to speak. So I'm a professional actor who is indeed a part of Actors Equity Association, the union for professional actors. I am a professional director. These are in the world of plays primarily, though occasionally I'll dabble in, doing some commercials or industrials. And then I'm also a facilitator, and I work for a healthcare organization's arts organization, and I have the great opportunity to help create conversations so that people can better their health. And so I talk about things like laughter is wellness, and I talk about things like care equity. And what's fascinating is a lot of what the country wants to talk about because of 2020, I've been talking about for a long time. How bias affects our health outcomes, how bias affects our day-to-day lives, how diversity matters, how culture is more and bigger than people. I literally have white people who will say, I don't have culture because I'm white. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Everyone has culture, everyone. So those are the things I do. Yeah. And then having conversations about race and discrimination and the arts, just any kind of conversation that's interesting. And usually the ones that other people find difficult are kind of the things that I love to do.
I love that. And I love that you use your art to have difficult conversations. I think it's the best way to possibly engage people. And I think that's so brilliant. Like, I can't tell you how many ways I feel like you and I could be friends. Like the more I heard thoughts about it, like, oh, and she's union. And I just, the whole thing. And so what was the most, you just recently did something that hasn't been finished yet, that you're directing. So do you want to talk about what you're working on?
Oh, sure. And it's interesting the way you say it. So I'll talk about the last thing I did, which can still be streamed, and then the thing I'm currently working on. So the last thing I did was I had the great privilege of directing a virtual drama called To the Moon, written by playwright Beth Kander for Creed Repertory Theater. And it's a domestic violence awareness piece. And it's really powerful. It was culled from taking interviews and live interviews from survivors. And then Beth Kander put this into this play. And so Creed Repertory Theater brought me on to direct, and I got to direct amazing women from all over the country and London. And it is streaming now through April 11th, and it's free. It's all part of
Where is
awareness.
that?
So
Put
Creed,
that
Creed,
on your
CREEDE rep.org, creedrep.org, and the place called To the Moon.
Rep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Creed,
Oh,
Colorado is
Yeah.
a mountain town, which is really beautiful.
Okay.
And
That's
then,
really cool.
thank you. And then I'm currently working on, I'm near the completion of completing a dramatic film that is devised by students at University of Northern Colorado, where they are telling the story of 2020 from their lens as college students. And it's called 2020
That's
Speaks.
really cool.
And so they write the works, the plays, the scenes, the vignettes, and then they also choose music from the musical theater canon, and then we film it. And then my job with the editor is to put it all together to tell a cohesive story. And it's been really powerful to hear these amazing young people speak about the really tragic experience of 2020.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you're passing this on to new people. Like this whole concept, it bothers me that arts have gone so far out of our schools. And obviously in Florida, we're definitely at the bottom of the barrel in terms of that. But like art and music and the things that I think are so important and critical have been trashed. I mean, like they're just trashed. And so when I hear of things like that, it makes me really happy because it's just, we need more of it.
I think that was one of the things, particularly in Trump's presidency, that got thrown to the side. Art in all of its forms is very important for developing a positive culture. Acting is not something that I've dabbled in personally to any great degree, but I do know that performing on stage takes a lot of courage and it takes a lot of strength. And I think it's the form of acting that is not only the hardest, but it should be the most respected. At least it usually tends to be in New York, where I'm from the Northeast. And so I'm curious what your experience has been like. Is there a preference between performing on stage versus performing on camera?
Yes, I definitely prefer performing on stage. I really appreciate the fact that it's a synergetic experience between the audience and I. The audience impacts, affects, alters the performance. The words that you say don't change, but there is something that happens when you're in a room with people and you can't help but feel it. And it changes things. The electricity is really powerful. So I love live theater for that. On-camera work is a different animal altogether, and there's beauty and power and poignance in that, but it doesn't fulfill me in the same way that a live experience does.
Which is why you're so good at giving a TED Talk. No, it's true. I mean, look, not everybody is cut out to be a public speaker. They're just not. I mean, you can get over being scared of it and get to where you can do it. But that doesn't mean that you thrive at it.
Well, you know what? It's actually interesting you say that because, Betty, as you know, there's a lot of interesting personalities that end up going into acting. I think Bob De Niro is a great example of that from the standpoint of he can act especially in his heyday, could act any type of role that you could think of. But when you get him on camera as Bob De Niro, he basically is a total introvert and not somebody that you would think would want to get in front of a crowd of people and start speaking. But when the lights are on, for some reason, it just clicks and they just know exactly how to do it. Do you cross, a lot of different actors that basically have, more of an introverted personality in their personal life, but once they're in front of the stage, it's like, it's time to rock and roll. It's showtime. I can do this.
Yes, I'm gonna answer both things because Jen brought up something as well. Fun fact, I wasn't doing any acting when I did my TED Talk, and here's a really interesting thing that kind of surprises people. I did not memorize my TED Talk. Cherry Creek, which is amazing, their TEDx, they have a different philosophy. They genuinely want it to be a conversation. And when you have a conversation with people, you don't memorize what you're going to say. You allow the best ideas to hit you right then. So that was actually frightening because memorizing makes sense. I know how to do that. I know how to score it and deliver it. But to trust the process and allow brand new ideas to hit me for the very first time in front of other people who are watching and to not have a safety net is actually really challenging. And that's what I did with that TED Talk. And everyone who saw me practice it saw, they're like, oh, it kept changing. Because it did. Every single day, new ideas hit me. So that's on the TED Talk end. So acting didn't necessarily help me there. On the acting front, I have tons of friends who are introverts. And absolutely, being a gifted performer is a skill. And it doesn't have anything to do with talking publicly. And so most of my acting friends would never want to moderate a conversation. They're always grateful if I lead the talk back. They can answer a question or two about their character. But even after that, they're like, I took too long, or I didn't get to the point, or I meandered. It's a real skill, I think, to be able to not just speak publicly, but to be able to kind of look ahead so that you know where you're going. I think that's the key in public speaking. You kind of have to know where you're going so you can get there the way you want. Otherwise, you're kind of meandering and you don't know how to get there.
Yeah.
One of the big things that happened that was a huge story during the effects of COVID, especially last year, was what happened with the union members of SAG-AFTRA and their healthcare. They basically were left out in the cold. And so, union power is nowhere near where it used to be, and obviously nowhere near where it needs to be. So I'm curious what your personal experience has been like being union versus non-union. And if we can talk a very small part of politics, the importance of what universal healthcare, Medicare for all single payer system would mean to actors in light of everything that has gone on in terms of, well, just the last year alone.
Woo, that's a lot. I would say certainly 2020 and 2021 continues to be a devastating time for professional actors. The inability for us to gather in groups, in large groups, affects everyone who performs. The unions have been very strict in terms of COVID protocols, which has made a lot of theaters unable to hire equity actors, which has been tremendously awful for many, many friends and colleagues. If I didn't have a day job, I don't know how I would have survived this time. And so I'm really grateful for that. And I feel deeply for all of my compatriots who only had the opportunity to perform and literally lost everything over the course of a year. I think having the access to healthcare and solid healthcare, right? I don't really want just a system that checks the block saying people can get healthcare. I want everyone to get excellent healthcare. I want everyone to be able to take care of any mental or physical need the way they should. The fact that we as a country don't have nearly enough psychiatrists, psychologists, therapists that are licensed is a crime because mental health is just as important as our physical health, and yet it's not taught. We don't go around talking about it so that we can normalize that the mind has its own needs, just like the body does. So I think there's so much work to be done in terms of healthcare, and I really wish and hope that I will live to see a day that anyone in this country can get healthcare when they need it affordably.
Yeah,
right?
We're working on it. We're working on it,
Well, Colorado tried. You had Colorado Care. I believe that there is some type of a clause in the state the state charter in Colorado that basically.
I lived there for 4 years in Boulder in college, partying my ass off. You think I could possibly remember what
Probably
the
not.
laws are like there? I know they have legal weed. That's about it, right?
Yeah, I know, but I know that they're trying. They're definitely trying, and I do think that the consensus. I think we're on our way. I really do. I think that universal healthcare will help significantly for the working class as much as anybody. I mean, obviously, it goes without saying that our healthcare system in this country is a racket. And pretty much everyone is aware of that now. It's the question of whether they have the will and the courage to really make that change, because it would be the most significant change of our lifetime, no question about it. But I do think that people who work in the line of work like acting, where nothing is guaranteed, constantly having to audition and really, pay your dues as well. That's a very big, it like you said, there's a lot of mental anguish that goes into being a performer. It really is. And, some people handle rejection one way, some people handle it another way. But the truth is, universal health care would include mental health.
Yeah, it's a big
and
thing.
that does just it. That and stress never gets talked about enough in our society, and just how I dealt with economic stress, financial stress for about 6 months to a year, and knowing what that was like and how stressed out I was. And once it was over, what a burden that had been lifted off of my shoulders. I can't even imagine how difficult it is, especially being in certain lines of work that just completely shut down and you have no idea where it's going to head. And I think that's a good segue, because we actually had a very awesome comedian on our show recently, Judah Friedlander. And one of the things that he talked about was the ability to do essentially live stream comedy shows. So I'm curious if there's anything related to some type of live streaming performance. Is that something that has taken shape in any capacity for you guys?
Absolutely. Live streaming and the ability to video performances has changed the game. The start of the year, started strong, and then everything shut down. And then there was a huge pause in the arts. And then collectively across the country and the world, people discovered you could still bring entertainment to people virtually. And so live concerts are live streamed, plays are live streamed, and then you also have just going ahead and filming it live, but then editing it so you can kind of get rid of any errors. And it's changed the game. And I think what it's really done is it's added a level of accessibility that I hope we never, ever go back from. Because now, regardless of where you live, if you have access to the internet, you can connect with the arts from around the world. And I think that's beautiful. And I hope that we'll always have that moving forward, because it changes the game. To be able to watch a play that's happening in France right now can completely expose someone in a different way than we ever did. Or if you're snowed in, like we had this snowstorm on Sunday, and you're stuck and you literally can't get out of your home, to be able to have the arts still come in and allow your heart to be expanded is beautiful. So yeah, I love the fact that that's been one of the gifts of the great pause and the pandemic that I hope we'll be able to use forward, no matter what.
Yeah. And I, as much as I like virtual reading, there's one thing that I do remember and love very much that was Denver was the Tattered Cover bookstore. And is that still there? Like, is that still like a thing?
It's under new owners. And it is still here, still going strong, and they've been doing work throughout the pandemic. So yeah, it's here to stay.
Okay. Good. I'm so glad. Like, people don't understand this bookstore is like an institution. Like, it looks like an antique library, and it's just beautiful and multi-storied, and just, it's the most amazing bookstore ever that I've ever been in. And so that's good to hear. I'm glad, because definitely need more independent those.
Yes. You should come. Clearly you miss us.
I do. Let me tell you, look, I'm a mountain girl stuck in a beach town. I moved from here to Boulder. I was there from 88 to 92. And look, I'm a mountain person for sure.
She's hooked on Asheville, North Carolina.
Yeah, that's where I would probably
I would definitely think that northern Colorado is definitely.
Oh, I like all of Colorado.
Yeah, but especially there's so many great places in the state. It's a great state. It is. It's the most desirable place to live that's not on the coastline.
So we can wrap with this, because I want you to what was the key message, because now there's probably people on that weren't on in the beginning, and sort of like do like a wrap up, and then we'll put the TED Talk link back up.
I also have a very important question to ask, Betty.
Oh, we do?
Yes.
What's our question?
What does generational change mean to you?
Ooh, what a great question. Generational change means breaking the past so that the future is forever better.
That's great. Okay. Can we use that clip in one of our videos?
Sure.
We get everybody to say generational change, generational change, generational change. Yeah. I think you're right. I think that's great. And I feel like we're seeing it happen in live time. That's what's really cool.
Yeah.
I think the fact that you were able to, I think the fact that you did it like an actress, where you were just, give me a line and just do it.
Yeah.
And the fact that you were just so
she's on
generational change. Boom.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is.
I would say that comes from being, It comes from my parents. I literally was raised by brilliant people. And so the ability to think is a part of me. And plug for the arts helps you to solve problems. And so you literally lobbed a problem at me. How do I answer this question? Boom. And you think for a moment and you go ahead and share it. And you don't have the fear, right? It's to be able to be creative is to be able to move through fear, past fear, and not let fear stop you. So I think that's kind of what you just got to experience.
Betty, I know we usually close with the question, what does generational change mean to you? But one question just sprung to mind, and I definitely have to ask it. Why, from your observation, because Colorado is a very unique state. It's a blue state, but it's got a,
She's not
it's got
political.
a, no, I know, but it's got
to let her be.
No, may I please?
All right.
It's got a very eclectic mix of culture.
It does.
And so what I think is very interesting is, especially on the conservative right in many ways, there is sort of this shunning of the arts in this country. From your perspective, why do you think that that is such like a hot button sticking point for a lot of people? It's like, oh, I don't want to invest any money.
I don't want to pay that. Why is my money going to that? Yeah.
Like, why, from your perspective, why do you think that that's such a hot button issue for predominantly people who tend to lean on the very conservative side?
Yes. Yes.
Well, first, I'll have to just give a shout out to the great state of Colorado, because we are actually, and depending on the year you look, we are either the #1 or the #2 state in the nation for people who actually attend arts events. So Colorado is pretty special, and Colorado is a purple state. We are an interesting mix of both red and blue, and across the board, they all still embrace the arts, despite the fact that most people in Colorado would rather be hiking than anywhere else indoors anyway. So gonna have to do that. That's very Colorado. What I would say, and I'm going to partially reject the paradigm that you're trying to spin of arts, people being against the arts because they're conservative Republicans. I would say that people love art, period, but some art is upsetting to others, period. And so when you have art that is willing to challenge the social mores, the morals of the time, and some of our traditions, you will have people who say, well, rather than simply rejecting this message, I want to reject all of it. So it goes back to that cancel culture idea, as opposed to saying, well, I can go and choose to see these kind of plays, or I can choose to go and see this type of art. Instead, some people with a louder mic perhaps will say, forget the arts, cancel the arts, we don't need to invest in the arts. But really, I would say that's simply short-sighted, because every culture that is thriving in the world supports the arts, except ours. So, and even without the country fully supporting the arts, one of the biggest products in our country is the arts. What we export in terms of film and television is still one of the largest industries. So you can like or dislike art all you want, but the bottom line is that art makes money. When you have a theater in a town, you get restaurants, you get shops, you get other boutiques, because it draws people. We are an economic driver. And what's sad is that we don't have people grabbing the megaphone to let people know what the facts are. And instead, we get to hear about minor issues that people have rather than the greater good that art does. If everyone knew how kids literally have their lives transformed because they discover that they have a voice, and I don't even mean their singing voice, but they recognize that something in them matters, and it changes the way they move throughout life and the adults that they become. So I would just say that we don't necessarily have a great marketing department to help the world know how valuable and how valid the arts are.
Yeah, I think what you were talking, he was talking more about like public funding for arts. I think that was more like what you were thinking, why people like, especially like conservative, fiscal conservatives have like this mentality of Well, that's superfluous. That's extracurricular. That's not the key things. And you saw it you've seen movies about this, like Mr. Holland's Opus, where they had to cut the music program because they're not going to cut English and math. Now, personally, I think we're better off with art than math, but that's just me. Whatever.
The problem, the fact that people don't recognize that math and arts, music is math. So when you learn music, that is math. Music is science. So again, I think the problem is that people want to relegate it to one item rather than looking at what it does in the entirety. Everyone in society wants human beings who can collaborate well. Everyone wants problem solvers. Everyone wants people who recognize their worth and, more importantly, recognize the worth of others. All of those things happen when you're involved in the arts, period. So when people are squabbling over other things, you're simply hearing people grab a soundbite that's really easy to promote because you can say, I'm a fiscal conservative, or I care about finances, which everyone cares about finances. Everyone wants our government to manage their money properly. Everyone pretty much that I know wants the government to balance budgets the way we as individual citizens have to balance our own budgets. Just saying. So I think it just becomes fodder to get some traction in the media, and it doesn't allow for the deeper conversations about what kind of society do we want to be and what does it take to get there.
I've always been intrigued by the arts. I particularly love photography, especially nature photography, and you're in one heck of a state for that. And I have to say that this conversation, I think, has been extremely informative. For those of you who do not, or maybe arriving late,
find the banner.
It is the banner. Betty Hart.
And what was the? Well, I don't. Is that the? That's not the exact title. Is that the exact title?
Canceling Cancel Culture with Compassion.
That's the title on YouTube, but on TED.com, because I was recently 2 weeks ago, I was promoted to TED.com. They've changed. Yeah, so I'm on TED.com/Betty Hart, which is pretty exciting. And last time I checked, over 700,000 people have watched my TED Talk.
Isn't that amazing? Like, you just got up there to do that. This isn't really what you do, and you just got up there and put that out there. But I think it really speaks as to how needed that message is right now. I mean, it just is. Like, it's very, and you really speak well. You do. I mean, you're a good public speaker. It is. But I think the message is critical.
Well, I think we're going to get you quite a few more views, and anything we can do to help. Your message is beautiful, and it definitely is very needed right now. We can't thank you enough, Betty, for coming on.
I know we kind of talked all over the place with you, but I just, we don't really usually have a plan.
That's what podcasts are supposed to do.
I mean, we do our research, like the content, but then we kind of just like let it fly.
Yeah.
I love that.
This is great. And like I say, and if I don't mind saying, I still think the highlight was your answer to generational change.
It was great.
That was money. Like,
it was good.
Yeah.
Well, please subscribe. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't.
Yes.
But I really love talking to you. Thank you so much for coming on. I loved your talk. So guys, check it out. Check it out on TED. Check it out on YouTube. Just go check it out.
It is beautiful, and so are you. And we thank you for coming on, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you so much.
So much. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, Betty.
Bye.
Thanks for watching. If you want to support our mission to transform politics into service, please like this video, subscribe, follow us on social media, and consider joining our Patreon, where you'll get early access to our interviews as well as other exclusive content. Links are in the description. Peace out.